Hey everyone, it's Toasty here. So recently, as a lot of you know by now, the ban list has prevented me from playing Thunder Dragons currently. While I am working on a list or trying to figure out a list that would make Thunder playable again, I've been kind of enjoying this format. I've been playing some decks I don't really take too seriously, just trying to like mess around and just have some like general fun overall. But on Wednesday, I actually got second place going through 6 rounds and ending X2 with a Tenyi deck. And I was playing it going second, and I just wanted to go over the list I played because it was heavily inspired off of someone's list from YCS Sydney. So huge shout out to them. But I thought it'd be really cool to go over my list because I did make some changes I felt like are some greater good improvements. So first off, we have 3 Tenyi Spirit Adhara. Now, I know a lot of you don't know how Tenyi might work, so what this one does is, so they all have an effect that if you control no effect monsters, you can special them from your hand, but they all have a unique effect, such as Adhara, if he just says that if you have a banished Tenyi, you can banish this one, but you have to control a non-effect monster. And when you banish it, you add a banished Tenyi back to your hand. So it's a really nice extender slash like recycler. Gets you more resources and also gets back resources that you used. It's very utility card. Typically, when there's another Tenyi that I'm going to talk about later, that you're going to want to get this, you're going to be able to summon this before. Next, we have 3 Tenyi Spirit Nahata. Now, I've seen a lot of lists that only play 1 or 2 of him, but this one's actually really good because his effect is that when a non-effect monster battles, you banish him and reduce your opponent's battling monster by 1500. Now, that might not seem like a lot because attack isn't that significant, but when you're pretty much just reducing your opponent's monster against your Link 3, you're pretty much attacking over anything in the game. And it's just a nice, again, it's another Tenyi, it's another name, so you still get this special summon. It's another body, and the way that I built my deck is I wanted to be able to special summon a Tenyi every turn, because if you're in a situation where you have no Tenyis in your hand and they're all in your grave, that means you're not able to make your non-effect monster. If you can't make your non-effect monster, you can't use the Tenyi effects in your graveyard. So it's another name, and its effect is actually pretty decent. Next up is actually my favorite, Tenyi Spirit Mapura. Another one that I've seen people play at 1 or 2, where I felt like it's at 3, because if your opponent targets your non-effect monster with a card effect, you banish this one to negate and destroy. Now, this is just additional protection, because if you have your Tenyi Monk, your Link 1, and they're trying to stop you from extending a play, you can actually banish your Tenyi Spirits out of your hand. Such as, like I mentioned with the green, who is the minus 1500, these effects also work in your hand as well. So if they don't know if this is in your hand, then they're likely to play into it more often than not. This is something you usually hold as your last Tenyi, whereas the other ones like Adhara, you're going to summon them sooner. Where you just want to hold on to the ones that have quick effects. And speaking of quick effects, we play 3 Tenyi Spirit Shathana. So this one activates when a non-effect monster is destroyed by your opponent's monster attacking over it or destroying it with a card effect. And when that happens, you just banish the water, or blue here, and you summon back that non-effect monster, and then destroy a card on your opponent's field. This effect does not target, so if you activate its effect and they say it's good, once you summon your Tenyi and say that this is the card that you're destroying, they cannot chain it. They've already allowed this effect to destroy and summon go through. They cannot chain to you destroying their card. Now, after that is the one that you probably all know, Tenyi Spirit Vishuda. This is the one that you can banish if you control a non-effect monster to return a card on the field. This is very nice against control decks where you get rid of their back row, and that means they have to set their traps again next turn and still can't use them. It's also 2500 defense, that's kind of nice, it did come up. It's also level 7, so that's going to work with your Adhara, who's a level 1 tuner. That's going to come up later. And then the final Tenyi is the one that came out separate from all the others, Tenyi Spirit Ashuna. Now, Ashuna is banish him from the grave or hand if you have a non-effect monster, summon from your deck. But when you do this, you're locked into Worms for the rest of your turn. So you typically want to summon Adhara off of this one's effect, because once you put Adhara in your grave, you can banish Adhara and add him back to your hand. There are situations, though, where you need to go for the other ones, but if you're just trying to recycle your resources, you typically want to go for Adhara. There was a situation where I needed to get rid of a Boral Sword, so I used this to get my Vishuda, and then once I put Vishuda in the grave, I was able to bounce the Boral Sword back into their extra deck, and that won me the game. Next up is just some other extenders, Phantom Sky Blaster and Mare. So Phantom Sky Blaster, if you don't know what it does, you summon him, and then once it's summoned, you get Sky Blaster tokens equal to the number of monsters you already control. So if you open this card and say 2 other Tenyis, you can special summon your Tenyi, link it away, special summon another Tenyi, then normal Sky Blaster, and make 3 tokens. It's pretty nice when you do get that combo off. Even if you see it by itself or see it with 1 Tenyi, it's still pretty good because you get a good amount of tokens, and tokens are treated as non-effect monsters, of course. Then you have Mare, who works with your Link 2. I'm going to talk about the Link 2 later, but this one you pretty much take 3 levels off him and summon 3 Mare tokens. It's also a tuner, so that's important to keep in mind because it's level 7. So once you use its effect 3 times, it becomes a level 4. So those are just important things to note for later on, and I'll show you guys why. Next up, just 3 Ash Blossoms, just standard negate. And then I'm actually playing the Kaiju package. This is going to be one of the biggest differences between my build and the YCS Sydney build, because they were main decking the Nibirus, which I didn't really like, but that's mostly because of how this format is. You're playing a lot against Altergeist, and you're playing a lot against Guru. If you play Nibiru in your main deck, you're probably not going to be able to resolve it in game 1 most of the time. Whereas Kaijus, you're pretty much guaranteed to be able to get these cards to go off, because there's almost no deck in the game that doesn't play monsters. You just tribute over whatever you want to get rid of, and you have a Kaiju on the field. I actually had wanted to play 3 Gamma Seals, but I couldn't find the other 2. So I decided to go with these, and there was a situation where it came up where I Kaiju'd my opponent, and then was able to special summon my Kaiju, another Kaiju out of my hand. So it gave me an extra monster and got rid of one of their monsters. Next up, since we're going second, and we actually can't OTK in this deck, is 3 Evenly Matched. And when I say we can't OTK in this deck, I just mean we can't consistently OTK. There's a few OTKs I'm going to show you in a bit, but at the moment we do play 3 Evenly Matched. Again, you're playing a lot against Guru and a lot against Altergeist this format, so Evenly Matched is always going to come in clutch, especially even against big board decks like Dragon Link. If you Kaiju their card that can negate the Evenly Matched, and then you hit them with this, it's usually enough to get you into the game or win you the game. Then 3 Impermanence, it's just in our standard negate. Again, you can just play it as a card out of your hand to negate, or you can set it as a back row to negate. Pretty standard card, pretty good. Next up is probably the best extender in the deck, Vessels for the Dragon Cycle. So for those of you who don't know what this card does, it sends a Wyrm from your deck to your graveyard, but if you have a non-effect monster on your field, it adds a Tenyi from your deck to your hand. But it has to have a different name from the monster that you sent to the graveyard. So if you find yourself playing against Tenyi, this is usually the card to stop, because this lets you send Mare to your graveyard, and then you can add something like Ashuna to your hand for later. And Ashuna is the light one that summons out of deck. So if you let this go off, the Tenyi player can usually make a pretty big board from there. Next up, we've got 2 Mind Control. This, at the moment, Mind Control did get semi-limited on the ban list, otherwise we would be playing it at 3, but unfortunately we cannot. Mind Control is still a really good card, steal your opponent's monster, and it doesn't even target just face-up monsters. You can target your opponent's set monster, and you can also change its battle position. Just cannot be used for an attack, cannot be tributed. Then I played 2 Twin Twisters in my main. The other one I'll show you will be my side, but this is, of course, again, another thing for Altergeist and Guru, or just any back row deck in general. Just pop 2 back row is pretty nice, and also you can discard your Tenyis, getting your graveyard together. And finally, the spice is Double or Nothing. I'm sure you know it's in the extra deck now, but this is a really cool card because you pretty much swing at your opponent's life points for 10,000 attack. If your opponent puts anything on the board that's 2,000 attack or lower, and you see a play that can get you into this combo, you're just going to kill your opponent on your first turn. So that wraps it up for the main deck. Now for the extra deck is 3 Monk of Tenyi. It's kind of self-explanatory. This is your play starter almost every turn. You usually want to finish the duel. This is usually your first turn. You break your opponent's board. And then on your second turn is usually you make this, and you can usually swing for game. You usually don't need to go into the third one, but you should still play it. Next is 2 Shaman. A lot of the time that I played this deck, I didn't go into the second Shaman. I would consider turning it into a land for Linkus, but that's still something I'm kind of considering. For those of you who don't know what Shaman does, you discard a card from your hand, special summon a Wyrm from your grave, which is why we're playing Mare, because we dump the Mare into our graveyard, and Shaman can bring it back later on in the turn. Again, there was a lot of times where I didn't go into the second Shaman. Now, what's also really good about this card is if a non-effect monster battles, when it declares that attack, you get to target, destroy a card on your opponent's field. That's pretty nice. But, again, I didn't really use the second one too often. It didn't really come up. Just needed the one most of the time. Then we have 2 Berserker. This is just your big boy that you want to make. So you have all your things like the red, the green, the blue that all protect this card, and then it's just 3,000 attack. The main downside to him is his link arrows. 1 points up and 1 points diagonally right. So if your only play is to put him in the extra monster zone, you give your opponent 2 extra zones to work with, unfortunately. There isn't a lot of times where I had to make the second Berserker. I just feel like it's something that's nice to have. There are times when you will want to get that second Berserker, I feel. And then 1 Draco Masters of Tenyi. So I'm playing this card only because it works in tandem with IP. So Draco Masters can't be destroyed by battle with effect monsters. So what you really want to do is make it with IP, so now it can't be destroyed by card effects and can't be destroyed by battle with effect monsters. Now, what's really good about this card is once per turn, you can destroy your opponent's effect monsters equal to the number of non-effect monsters you control and in your graveyard. So what's really even better about that effect is it doesn't target. Once you activate it, it's one of those things where you don't declare targets. If they let it go through, you destroy their cards. Now, that's the one downside to him, is you can't control other effect monsters, but that doesn't really matter. It doesn't come up. Now, in most cases, it doesn't come up. And of course, I just showed you the IP that we're playing, just so you can make your Draco Masters. I decided one Nightmare Phoenix. So, in the recent meta, I found that there's a lot of times where you don't get that draw effect, and with this deck, you actually can do that, because there's a lot of times where you can make the Monk and still have two other cards on the field that turn to your Phoenix. And now that you have a Link 2 and a Link 1, you can make your Link 3 after that. So you can usually pop a back row and get your draw effect in this deck, so that's pretty cool. Then there is one land for Linkus. As I mentioned before, I feel like this card can be up to 2. There are a lot of situations where you will want to be able to make this card, because there's times where you don't have the discard for Shaman, or you don't have 2 worms to make Shaman. That's why I feel like Shaman can probably go to 1, and Land for Linkus can go to 2. Land for Linkus is pretty good in this deck, surprisingly. Next up, the Utopia and the Utopia Double kind of speaks for itself. This searches your double or nothing, which we have right here, and then it makes your Utopia. And it also increases its attack to 5,000. Now when you swing with your Utopia, you detach, negating his own attack. Then you activate your double or nothing, which kind of speaks for itself, double its attack, raising it to 10,000, and then lets it attack again. So you swing with 10,000 attack. Again, if your opponent has anything that is 2,000 attack or less, and you make this, you attack for game automatically. Now, if you open 2 level 4 Tenyis and 1 other Tenyi, and your opponent only has 1 monster on the field with 3,000 attack or less, you can still just win the game right on the spot. Because what you would do is you'd use Monk to make, well, you'd use your first Tenyi to make your Monk. Then you'd special summon one of the level 4 Tenyis, normal summon the other, and make this. Then you swing this guy over your opponent's monster for anywhere from 8,000 damage to 7,000. And if they're still alive, you swing directly with Monk, who has 1,000 attack. That is 8,000 damage almost every time, and closes out the game. So in a lot of situations, if you see your opponent with any monster in the game, 3,000 attack or less, that you can destroy by battle, you just swing this right over it after doing your double or nothing combo, and that can usually close out the game when you have Monk of Tenyi on the field. Now, next up in the extra deck is our Synchros. So, Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. I'm sure a lot of you guys pull this card. This card has a very high pull rate in what says it's from Chaos Impact. I see pretty much everyone pulls this card. And what it does is actually a really good effect. So when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can banish it. And then if this card destroys an effect monster and sends it to the grave, this card gains attack equal to the destroyed monster. Well, its original attack. And then it gets to declare a second attack on a monster. That gain is permanent, so if it destroys something with 2,900, it goes up to 2,900. And then Boral Savage Dragon. This card doesn't come up too often because your synchro play is usually after you've already used the Shuna, so you're already locked into worms. But there are times where it is an extra option to have. Now, onto the side deck. The side deck is the one that I want to change the most. So, because we're playing Go second deck, I'm very worried about people deciding to make me go first. So, I actually side 3 Vanity's Fiends. This is a card that just says neither player can special summon. So if your opponent makes me go first, I drop one of these, I can just close the game out immediately. Next up is 3 Nibiru's. Again, I mentioned I'm not main decking this, but there's no reason I wouldn't side it. Because, again, there's a lot of decks in the current, I'm not going to call it a meta, but the competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! That are just back row decks. I feel like this format is just a very casual format. It's pretty much the same format that we've been playing, only the meta is taking out of it. Now it's just like, it's a rogue free for all, in my opinion. This is it's a very like odd format. It's a lot of fun, but it's not a format where Nibiru should be main decked, even if you're going second, because there's not too many decks that Nibiru would be able to do anything against. As I mentioned, Gurus, Altergeist, not too damaging to have Nibiru, whereas the Kaijus would be better. Now, next up, 3 Drool and Lockbird. Now, I know this is a bit of a surprise for most of you, but at the moment I've noticed that Mech Knights are very, very popular right now. People are really picking them up. You can even see on TCG Player that all the Mech Knight and the Invoke support is going up, the Invoke Mech Knight deck. And this is also for Spirals. I've seen that Spirals can do some pretty nasty combos, but I don't think it's late enough to worry about them yet. I feel like it's too early. There's not a lot of people out there who are ready to drop $300 on a playset of Magician's Soul, so I wouldn't worry about having this card if you don't have it yet. But just make sure that you pick it up before Spirals become affordable or before many people are able to get their hands on Magician's Soul. Right now, you don't have to worry about Spirals, but you should be picking up your Drool and Lockbirds preemptively. Then next up is a red reboot. Again, that's for back row decks. The 3rd Twin Twisters for back row decks. And then just some more just going first package stuff. 2 Solemn Strikes, so if we go first, again, we can just strike things. A Skill Drain. And finally, Imperial Order, which I did not see myself use once. There was no situation where I sided the Imperial Order in. So what I'm thinking of doing is taking this and 2 other cards out of my side deck for Majesty's Fiend, because there are decks in the game that your Vanity's Emptiness wouldn't hurt, but Majesty's Fiend would. And I feel like it would be very useful to have both of those options available to me. But that is the list. So let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. And I definitely have more good content on the way. Actually, I have some pack opening videos coming up. I have a lot planned. There's definitely going to be a lot more unique deck profiles on this channel in the future now that I'm not playing Thunder. Maybe there will be another Thunder profile, but it won't be as comparable to my other 3 profiles. It's definitely going to be something that I built from the ground up, but I hope you guys look forward to all those things. Until next time.